The United States has a drug problem. And no, it's not the kind you're thinking of. The United States is a country that has consistently confused convenience for health, and now we found ourselves in a state that having more medications is somehow beneficial. Could everyday medications to treat blood pressure, allergies, cholesterol actually be causing more harm than good? Unfortunately, it's very difficult to get a straightforward yes or no answer to this question. One thing's for certain, in perpetual United States fashion, we crush the competition in every aspect, including spend. In the year 2019, the United States spent over $1,300 per capita on medications. Second place was given to Germany at just over $900. We rock the world in quantity as well. In 2019, about 14% of Americans took more than 4 medications per day. In 2023, that number ballooned up to 18%. Particularly, the most vulnerable to this excessive medicating are our senior citizens. Among people aged 65 and over, it's common to see 7 medications per person per day. And I personally have seen a whopping 43 medications for a single person in a day. I've noticed, especially whenever we talk about things like medications and healthcare, a lot of people want one simple scapegoat to cast their eyes upon, but this is, again, one of those instances where the reason is multifactorial. I don't know. But that's not the whole answer, because America probably is more sicker than most developed countries. America has higher rates of heart disease, diabetes, obesity. Things like this can very easily be attributed to a sedentary lifestyle. But then again, some of it is genetic. I don't want to make everyone feel like they have somehow chosen their own destiny. But I would offer something different. I think it's not necessarily a sedentary lifestyle that's to blame. It's actually the food that we're consuming in the massive quantities that we consume them. Alas, I digress. It's no secret the United States is a playpen for Big Pharma. The entire industry is worth over $600 billion, and it's one of the only countries that allows direct-to-consumer advertising. Now, I personally have never thought that this was a bad thing, per se. I mean, what's the problem with somebody being informed, even if it's not really that helpful? At least I wouldn't think so to the average person to see a advertisement for some new gout medication. But some critics speculate this normalizes the idea that if you have a problem, there can and should be a pill to solve it, which is incredibly false. That's why we have scam medications and supplements that exist. We're really good at identifying problems, but if the treatment doesn't have value in relation to that problem, then there's no point in taking it. For example, Prevagen makes people think that they're going to all of a sudden be smarter and have better memory. That's a good problem to isolate, but this doesn't help with that at all, yet this still makes, bajillions of dollars every second. Other critics have speculated that Big Pharma spends billions of dollars on lobbying. Well, that's not speculation, that's true. But they speculate that these trainings and lobbying for physicians shape the way we practice medicine. It's cultural and it's epidemic. But doctors feel incredible pressure to not only act in a way that they feel is right and moral, but to also perform in the same way somebody with similar skills and training would also do. If you don't, you may be susceptible to litigation or being sued. I don't know what the correct terms are for things. Legal action could be taken. I've heard a term thrown around the medical community called defensive medicine. I don't want to get sued, so I'm going to prescribe X, Y, and Z medication, get, this, that, and the other test. But I don't really like that term because it makes it sound like the physician or the nurse practitioner or physician assistant or whatever is acting in a way that is solely in their own interest. It's not really their fault. This is the system that we have created. If 9 out of other 10 prescribers would do this one thing, then you have to do it too. Because if, God forbid, something happened, that would look really bad. Additionally, as I alluded to earlier, people create they create their own demand for a quick fix for something that may or may not have a quick fix for. And they engage with medical professionals with this idea, this preconceived notion already made. So what's easier, folks? Telling someone that they need to start a diet, arguing with somebody about their lifestyle, or giving them the pill that they wanted to begin with? Moreover, and I believe that this probably could be one of the biggest culprits, is that people, particularly in retirement age, become professional patients. Perhaps they have nothing better to do, and yes, it does get exhausting growing old, and it's quite painful. There are a lot of ailments that, if solved, would make their life a lot better. People come to the doctor with a preconceived expectation, and they want something, or else they feel like they just wasted their time and they wasted their money. The whole system, everything I said there, subtly nudges towards more drugs are better. The irony here, as a licensed pharmacist in 4 states, I would actually like to see people taking less medications. And all of my pharmacist brothers and sisters would agree. Sometimes we medicalize normality. Sometimes we treat symptoms rather than causes. And what happens in the end is somebody ends up with a 43 medication med list. Forget the cost and the daily time devoted to this. There's medication interactions. There's medication misuse because it's very easy to get confused if you're taking 43 drugs a day. Sometimes things get missed and some of them are unnecessary. And all this may put somebody in a position where they'd be better off just without all of it, or maybe even some of it, but you can't prove it. This is one of my favorite things about medicine, and I use that term quite ironically, that I hope Crush Cost is able to remedy one day. When medications are approved by the FDA, we're really good at showing how to use them, but they're actually not required to talk about how to discontinue the medication. And this confusion in and of itself speaks volumes, I think, to the culture in this country. I get questions all the time about folks who may have been on a medication for a very long time. The doctor feels it's time for them to get off of this medication, and they don't know how. You have to reduce the dose gradually, maybe. Maybe you can stop it entirely quickly. But if you do have to reduce the dose, how fast is too fast? What dose reduction is too much? We don't know for most medications because it's not a requirement to get approved. A particular class of medications that is most notable are things for mental health, particularly antidepressants. Prescriptions for antidepressants like sertraline or Zoloft, escitalopram or Lexapro have skyrocketed since the 2000s. Is this because people are more mentally ill than before, or are we medicalizing normal emotions? Medications like these are very valuable to a lot of people, and quite frankly, they're lifesavers. But if we use these as the only tool to solve a problem, that might be an issue. Things like therapy, exercise, social connection, purpose, you can't put that in a bottle, but the thing that's in the bottle is much easier to take. With the convenience of taking a pill, also, our pharmacies are pressured to become more and more convenient. I was at a pharmacy in Switzerland recently, and I asked what's the amount of prescriptions you do a day. And I was told about 20, and she said a busy day would be around 80. And I just laughed. If you did 80 prescriptions at a pharmacy in the United States, you wouldn't even be in business. I'd say 200 to 300 is pretty normal, and I've seen over 500 a day. This poses the question, should medications be the standard or a backup plan? Sometimes I'm not so sure. I think it depends on the condition. So are medications in America too expensive? Yeah, I think everybody agrees there. Do we medicalize normalcy? I don't know. It's tough to say sometimes. All this to say, sometimes I get really upset whenever I see the benefits are not being appropriately weighed against the risks. Or I guess the non-benefits, rather. Take, for example, Adderall, which is a medication used to treat attention deficit disorder. A lot of folks who take this medication or similar medications have claimed that it has changed their life and they very much need it. But some folks could probably do without it. And they're not being told how much of a burden it's actually going to be on your life simply to get this medication. It's expensive, insurances are stingy, there's probably going to be a problem with the insurance. Combine an overbearing workload on pharmacies and government-regulated dispensing limits, it is really, really difficult to get this Schedule II medication, even if your doctor writes the prescription. For a lot of people, that burden isn't worth it, yet they're shelling out hundreds of dollars a month, I've seen, just to avoid, going through insurance or whatever. There's lots of different reasons why someone may do that. So I wonder sometimes if the question doesn't become, which medication should we take, but instead, is one actually needed, given everything, all things considered, in the first place?